In this session, we take a look at how to work with Visual Studio Code terminal. Firstly, we shall look at how to bring up the terminal. On Visual Studio Code menu bar, you will click on the terminal and that will pop it open immediately. A quicker way will be to press down on Ctrl, Shift and the backward or tilde key. It is located just below the Escape key and before the number 1 key. Both ways immediately launch the terminal. The default terminal on Visual Studio Code is the PowerShell terminal. When we click on the PowerShell button, we get to see a drop-down with additional commands. Same with the plus button, which upon clicking also gives us our drop-down with some additional commands. Further on right, we find a split window icon and besides it, a kill terminal icon. We have a maximize panel size button and lastly, our close terminal button. We can move that terminal into the workspace using the move terminal into editor area command. And to undo that, we can right click and select move terminal into panel. We can convert our space into a Python runtime, then split the terminal. And as you can see, the newly created terminal is a default PowerShell and not a Python terminal. We can kill the terminal, which essentially means to close it. Then we can have a new CMD terminal. And as you can see, we still have our PowerShell terminal running Python. We shall come to the difference between the command prompt and PowerShell in a while. If you launch a new terminal, Visual Studio Code by default creates a PowerShell terminal. Now we have a close button at the top right part of the terminal window, and essentially what this button does is to minimize the terminal because if we bring up the terminal once more, we will find the previous terminals running. So to appropriately close a terminal, you will simply hover on it, and when the bin icon shows, we click upon it to kill the terminal. Back on the Python terminal, we could write a simple command to output hello world. The command behaves the exact same way both on the CMD terminal and on the PowerShell terminal. But let us look at the differences between the command prompt and Windows PowerShell. Firstly, Windows PowerShell was introduced in the year 2006, while its predecessor, the command prompt, has been in use since 1981. So it is natural that the PowerShell has lots of improvement over the command prompt. And it is true. PowerShell has access to programming libraries as it is built on the .NET framework. On the other hand, the CMD has no access to libraries. PowerShell can connect to Microsoft Cloud products, while CMD does not have any such capabilities. While PowerShell supports Linux systems, CMD does not. PowerShell can run command prompt commands. The command prompt cannot run PowerShell commandlets. Let's look at a practical example to list all files within a folder. In the CMD, we simply move to the folder and use the dir command. We can do the same in PowerShell and it works. However, the commandlet command for this will only work with PowerShell. On the CMD, it gives an error. These are just but a few basic contrasts. So PowerShell is quite robust, and that is why Visual Studio Code uses it for the terminal by default.